Hello and welcome everybody to another Gimmal Education Series session where we explore ways to enhance your expertise with your Gimmal software. Next slide, Tim, please. Thank you. My name is Marcia Shields and I'm from our customer success team. I'll be your host, and joining us today is Tim Butler, sales engineer, who's your subject matter expert. We're happy to have you with us, whether you're joining us live or watching the recording later. Today's session is reviewing Gimmal Physical and its conditional field display. Excuse me. Session will be about 30 minutes, including time at the end for your questions. If you do have questions, which we strongly encourage, please post them in the Q&A area below on your Zoom bar, and I'll be collecting them and tee those up for Tim after he's done with the demonstration. As you may have heard, we are recording a session and it will be shared after the event and posted to our Gimmal All-Star or Gimmal YouTube channel. And yes, thank you, Tim. So before we actually get into the main event, I'd like to congratulate another Gimmal All-Star, Melanie Brooks. Melanie's participation in our education series has earned her enough points for her Gimmal All-Star badge. Congratulations, Melanie, and thanks for being a great part of our community. To get us started today, I'm going to kick off with a short poll question, if you don't mind. Today's question, Tim, I don't know if you can see this, but the question today is, beyond boxes and files, which of the following would your organization benefit from tracking? So we're asking about microfilm, microfiche, books, binders, notebooks, maps, road plans, all the above. So I'm going to let that roll for others that might be joining a couple minutes late, and I will share those results later. And Tim, I think that's it for me, so I will let you take things away.
Thanks, Marcia. Appreciate it. And good morning to everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, as the case may be. Again, we're always grateful for you guys spending a few minutes out of your day. And as Marcia said, today we're going to be looking at a feature known as conditional field display. And using the magic of Windows here, I've actually pulled two windows up, so don't be too confused. We're going to jump back and forth. Just make it a little easier to explain what you're about to see. On the left-hand window here, guys, what you're seeing is the 4.0 version, maybe new for some of you, came out a month or two ago. For those of you that upgrade, this is what the interface will be looking like when you do upgrade. That's not our purpose here today, but just so you're aware, if your InfoLinks or your Gimmal Physical application looks very different, it's just because you're on a little bit of an older version. 4.0 looks like this. Now, I think probably just about all of you on the call today have become familiar over time with your InfoLinks Gimmal Physical system. That central to the architecture is what we have historically called tabs or data views. In 4.0, there are these things that are lined up here in the left-hand panel. And they all operate more or less the same way, right? You can define the metadata per tab, you can import data in, you can export data out, you can search. Depending upon the type of tab, you can request or transfer or print labels, what have you. So for our purposes today, I have added a tab to my little demo application here called the Media tab, and that's the tab I'm on. And what I'm going to do here is jump to the Create page, and we're going to digest this for just a couple of minutes here. At first look, nothing special about what you're seeing right now. It's just one more data view. These are the fields that I have designed into this data view, and I've captioned them a certain way, and you'll see why I captioned them this way throughout the course of our education session here today. But at first glance, it looks like really all the other data views in the system. But here's where I really want you to focus your attention right now is on this top field, which is a conditional field display list. We'll talk about that in a little more detail, but for now, just note when I land on this page, it is the topmost field and there are other pieces of metadata below that. However, when I now choose a value from this list, and by the way, like all lists in Gimmal Physical, you can populate the list with any values you want. I've kept it simple here with just the two of digital and print. The idea here, guys, would be that you'd have a single data tab or data view for tracking media. And regardless of the subtype, if you will, you're going to condense all of them into this single tab. And guys, that's really the use case of conditional field display, because before I click these values here, I could have designed my application with two separate data views, one for digital media and one for print media. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And towards the end of the session here today, we'll talk about advantages, disadvantages. In other words, when should you multiply your data views and when should you condense them and make use of the conditional field display? We'll get there in just a few minutes. But for now, please take note of the behavior. When I choose a value, in this case, digital, I had additional fields that are now displayed, specifically those three that I just highlighted. Whereas if I choose print from that list, I'm going to get a different set, and now I'm only actually seeing one additional field, historic. If I go back to the initial view, these fields that you see here, these five, are actually common regardless of which value I choose. You're always seeing the values that you see displayed here. Now, the question becomes, okay, Tim, how do we do that? Two answers there. We can do this, that is, Gimmal can do it for you as part of your initial application design, or you can have it implemented during an upgrade if you would prefer. But the good news here, guys, is that you can actually do this all by yourself in the application. You don't even need Gimmal necessarily to do this. The way it happens, and this does go back a ways in terms of version, guys, all the way back to, I think, about version 3.7. Which is a number of years old now. So probably just about everybody on this call here today or in this meeting has this conditional field display capability. Now, we have made some tweaks to it over the versions, so depending on your version, your mileage will vary slightly. But with that, let's focus your attention now on the right-hand panel. How do you make conditional field display work? So I'm over here on the admin page, right? I clicked on this gear, I clicked on the admin page, I landed on this page. Step number one, if you want to use conditional field display, is actually to go to Field Display Advanced. And I'm going to show you the tab that I'm using here, the Media tab. So I'm going to drop this down and choose Media. For those of you familiar with this page in the application, once you've selected the tab, the second list shows you every field on that particular tab. And in this example here, what I did today is I took this guy right here, media category, that topmost field on the left. I took this guy and I simply slid over here and I checked that box, conditional display. As I mentioned, any of you can do this. There are some caveats and limitations which we'll get to, but you can do this from version 3.7 forward. Now, if you have a list field and you want to make it a conditional display list, you simply come to Advanced Field Display, find the right tab, find the right field, and check that box, and then, of course, update. That's step one to begin to use or begin the configuration of conditional field display. Step two is once you have done that, back on the admin page now, you'll now see a conditional field display link here. When you click on that, same basic idea here, go find the tab that you want to work with, and you'll see once you select the tab, the list, this guy on the left that we just designated, media category, it's displayed here, and it's also displayed topmost within this control down below. Now, what you see, guys, when you're using conditional field display, on the left-hand side are all the other fields on this data tab or this data view that are eligible to be governed by conditional field display. The columns that you see here, digital and print, they correspond to the values in your drop-down list. Now, again, I kept mine very simple, only 2 values. But if you had 10 values in this list, you would then see 10 columns spreading across the page here, 1 column for each value in the list on the left-hand side. Once you're seeing this control, all that's left to do here is simply check or uncheck the fields. Now, just a little explanatory note here. When you check a field in this control, what you're saying is, I do not want that field to display when the value in the list is print, right? So I've set mine up that, okay, when I'm choosing print, content state range, media status secured list, and publish date, those 3 I do not want to have appear. So sure enough over here, if I click on print, you're not going to see those 3. Whereas I am going to see historic because I have not checked it. And sure enough, over here on the left, historic shows up. Conversely, when I choose digital, you can follow the logic through. Really, the only field I'm hiding here is historic. Now, if you see rows of data here, some of them are really not germane to our conversation today, but there are some fields that you may want to display regardless of what the drop-down choice is. In that case, just don't check any boxes, leave them all open. Be aware of that. And that's the initial look again when we first land on the page, before you selected which fields are going to be involved in this conditional field display. Now, that's the quick basics, guys, of how this control works. You go to Advanced Field Display, you enable it, you then go to the Conditional Field Display tab, you configure it the way you want, and then it's active on that tab. I haven't explicitly set it so far, so let's say it now, guys. It is a system-wide setting. You cannot vary this by roles or users. Whatever you do here is going to be presented to everybody who can use this particular tab, in this case, the Media tab. Now, a few caveats you need to be aware of if you do want to use conditional field display. First of all, there are certain limitations on what is eligible to be the driving list or the driving field. Number one, I think it's pretty obvious, but let's say it anyway, it has to be a list. We drive the logic off of values in the list, so if you want to use conditional field display, you have to be talking about a list. Second limitation, you can only have, as of today in version 4 and in version 4.1, which is coming out next month, we think, you can only have one conditional field display list per tab. That may eventually change, but for now, be aware that's the limitation. You can only have one of these guys per tab. You cannot have multiple. Second limitation, you cannot use what's known as a secured list and also make it a conditional field display list. Again, we may eventually introduce that functionality, but for now, know that you can't do that. Now, for some of you who are thinking conditional field display and secured list, what does that mean? Very quickly, just to refresh the memory, I'm going to jump out of that page there, jump into the permissions here. Secured lists are those lists where you can do this kind of thing, where for every value in the list, in this case, just yes, no, you can turn on or off different functions. So similar in concept, secured lists are letting you turn on or off functions, whereas conditional field displays are letting you turn on or off fields. You can't use those in tandem. So just be aware now, if it's a secured list, it cannot also be a conditional field display list. And then finally, guys, in terms of limitations, what cannot be the driving list, you cannot use this kind of list. I think, again, most of you are pretty aware. The lists that you have in your Gimmal Physical system, most of them are single selection lists, but we do have a variety of multiple selection lists where you can choose multiple values. This one's not even on the radar, guys. Unlikely we will ever allow you to use a multiple selection list as also a conditional field display list. So be aware of that in terms of what can drive conditional field display and those limitations. There's also limitations once you've actually set the proper field as the conditional field display list, which fields below that, the other fields on the data view, which of them can be managed. And let's come back there one more time to conditional field display. Which of them are eligible to show up in this control right here? There's some limitations here as well. First of all, and this is the reason I kind of captioned these fields, the fields the way I did. Back on the left-hand side, guys, on the Media tab, I actually created a 3-level hierarchy of category, media type, and media subtype. So category is the parent of media type. Media type is the child of category, but it's also the parent of media subtype. Well, because this guy is a parent, you cannot make a parent list. He cannot be a part of the conditional field display logic. You'll notice that this field, media type, does not show up in my grid. Again, we may eventually introduce that, but for now, just know a parent list cannot be one of the candidates to be governed by conditional field display. You can also, guys, you cannot make secured fields. This guy right here, for example, media description, he's just a text field. To refresh the memory for some of you, what a secured field is it means you have designated it, and this is something you can do all by yourself as well, again, over in Field Display Advanced. If you make a field secured, it then opens up additional security rights that in the end, and to simplify for you guys, it means you can hide that individual data element. So if you've got some sensitive data, you don't want certain people to see that data, even if they can see the data view we're talking about, just know if you make the field secured, it enables you to hide the data, but then it prevents you from making that field a part of the conditional field display logic. So that's another limitation. One of the other limitations, guys, is that if you have fields that are required, now I don't have any besides this top field, but I'm talking about all the fields below that. You'll notice none of these are required. That's because you cannot make the required status, you cannot drive that with conditional field display. Now, some good news on this point, guys. We are introducing in the next version 4.1 where you will be able to do that. But be aware, for those of you, any of you that are using conditional field display now, or if you turn it on, beware that you cannot make a required field part of this logic. You will be able to in 4.1, but currently that is indeed a limitation of the conditional field display candidates. And the last thing, guys, is this kind of control. Again, these multiple selection controls, they can also not be governed. You won't see him again over here as part of the candidates for conditional field display. Now, so those are the limitations, guys, both in terms of what kind of field can be the driver, which kind of fields can be governed by the logic within. Let's talk for a moment here, guys, about why would you want to do this, right? Or what are the advantages, disadvantages? Guys, there's not really a best practice here per se. It's not a right wrong. It's really what is going to work better for your particular business processes, what's going to work better for the way your data structure looks. But here's some thoughts just to keep in mind. So what are some of the advantages? Let's start there of using conditional field display. Probably the big one, guys, it's just you're reducing the number of tabs, right? Or the data views. We have some clients, believe it or not, guys, we've had a number of clients that have more than 20 different data views, tabs, in the pharmaceutical sector in particular. Within the pharma industry, they track all kinds of stuff, right? It's various types of batch and or lot records, equipment records, log books, QA, tests, and all kinds of things. And so in the pharmaceutical sector, and then also sometimes in the public sector, there's different reasons, but some of our clients have more than 20 of these tabs. There really is no limit. You can have as many of these tabs or data views as you want, but it just makes the system a little more complex, right? It means more stuff you have to manage. And you always want to keep it as simple as possible. So one of the big benefits of working with conditional field display is that you can limit the number of tabs. Again, in my example, I could have had two tabs, one for digital media, one for print media, but I said, let's just have a single tab for media and use conditional field display. Because it's on one tab now, an additional benefit there really is related to some of the common functions. So when you talk about searching, as most of you are aware, primarily the way you search in Gimmal Physical is first you go to the data view that you want to go to. So if you had spread the digital and the print media out on two different tabs and you needed to search, you'd have to go to both tabs. Now, there is a way under admin, for those of you familiar with the global search, where you can search across multiple tabs simultaneously, but it is limited in terms of what you can do with that data once you've got the results set back. So again, the benefit there, it makes the searching, it would make the importing, it would make the exporting, and any other tertiary functions after the search that you perform can make your life a little bit easier here in terms of combining things into a single data view or tab and using conditional field display. That overall, guys, kind of encapsulates the reasons why you would want to do this. Now let's talk about some of the disadvantages if you do choose to go with this, or why you might not want to use conditional field display. We already mentioned the big one there, that you're limited in terms of which fields can be governed by conditional field display. And the big one there historically has been you can't use required fields. Now we're solving that issue in 4.1, but there are still limitations, as you heard just a few moments ago. Another really big one, subtle, but it's really important. If you were to create on a particular tab, a single tab, and you were using conditional field display, and in real life, what those subtypes reflected, let's just use the example, maybe a little bit silly, but let's use it nonetheless. Let's say you had a single data view and you use conditional field display to designate whether I'm talking about a document or a file folder. All right, so you could do that, a single tab, and you would maybe just call it records. And then when you get there, you choose record type, and it says either document or it says file folder. You could do that, but where you reach a pretty severe limitation, guys, is you would never be able to transfer the document into the file folder. Another way to say that more generically is you cannot transfer records into records of the same type. It's a recursive function that we do not support. So just be aware of that. If you have different record types and you want to transfer one into the other, do not use conditional field display because you will not be able to do that. Another subtle little thing to be aware of with conditional field display, it supports imports. That's the good news. You can import both types, subtypes of records in one big session. Slight downside, doesn't really do any significant damage, but you should be aware during the import process, we do not enforce the conditional field display, right? So back on the tab here, you could set up an import profile and you might specify a digital record as part of your data, but you might also check the historic checkbox. So that would mean the record would show in the database, it would say it's digital, but it would also have the historic checkbox checked, which doesn't really make sense if really you want historic to only apply when you're talking about print. Again, no damage per se, but a little bit confusing. Also be aware, guys, just a couple more here and we'll be done, that as is true of any architectural choice you make, the more complex the architecture, the more slow the application will perform. Now, the big offenders here, and some of you are aware of this, right? Probably the biggest offender, guys, in terms of what would slow your system down, really in terms of searching in particular, is the number of fields you have on a particular data view. Now, in theory, you can have hundreds of fields, but you rather quickly actually begin to bump up against limitations, Microsoft limitations, that are kind of baked into Microsoft SQL Server, which is the backend database. And some of you have actually seen this. When you start to get up towards 100 or so data elements or fields or beyond, the system can begin to slow down. And it's really nothing Gimmal Physical centric in particular. It's more a Microsoft issue that we're limited by. But be aware that if you're thinking, oh, great, I have 10 different tabs and I want to combine them all into one tab and use conditional field display. You can, but if those 10 tabs comprise 100 or more fields, be aware you'll get the one tab, called whatever you want to call it, but it's going to act a little more slowly in terms of the searching that you have. And in the end, guys, those are the advantages, the disadvantages to be aware of. And with that, I'm going to open it back up, kicking it back over to Marcia and see if we have any questions that came through.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Thanks so much. Great job on that. Oh, you must have covered it really well. We have one question. It came in earlier, but there's still time. If you all have questions, just pop them in the Q&A and I'll tee them up. And Tim, you just went through a lot of the advantages and disadvantages, but this question came in earlier. When is conditional field display advised and when is it not? Is there like a hard line on its use?
There's no hard line. Yeah, and it's half art, guys, and it's half science. I would just say this: if you're considering using conditional field display, you can do it right now in your system. You can begin to see what the ramifications are simply by what we talked about earlier. You go to the admin, you turn it on, and then you configure the field so you can have a look at it right now. Good news is you can also turn it off if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not liking the way it's acting here. Simply go back to advanced field display and uncheck that conditional field box. Then you're back to the way you were before, just with the simple list that you had before. So that's answer number one. Answer number two, guys, you can certainly have these conversations with the Gimmal client success team. They can talk as specific to your instance of Gimmal Physical, right? How many data elements you have, how big the data elements are in terms of number of characters, and all that kind of good stuff. So no right or wrong there, guys. In the end, it's a conversation you should have either internally, then test it out, or have that conversation with the Gimmal client success team.
Okay, thanks, Tim. All right, well, that kind of brings us to wrapping things up. Real quick, for those interested, the question earlier we posed, which was beyond boxes and or files, which are the following would your organization benefit from tracking? 70%, all of the above. So that was the big winner. Second place was maps, ruled plans, and drawings at 30%. So thank you all for participating in that. The last thing I have for you, I'm going to put up another question while you're wrapping up. This one's pertaining to events. You know, Gimmel's going to a bunch of things. If you happen to be there, we'd love to connect. Let us know if you're going to be at any of these events. And thank you, Tim, for bringing this up. Q3 Education Series schedule is going to be coming out. It's on our website right now at Gimmal Event. You can go there to register. Otherwise, an email will be hitting your inbox next week for these sessions that you're welcome to register for. Along those lines, if you do have suggestions for future sessions for us, we're always looking for that. So feel free to send those along to myself. But until then, we will see you next time, hopefully real soon. Thank you for joining us today. Greatly appreciate it.